footage that you are about to see, it's a New Game Plus 4, and the regular footage from the basic enemies, it's just regular New Game Plus, but on the endgame enemies. The thing that I like about this weapon is that it's so overpowered, but it's not broken level on the things that I think that are going to get nerfed. I think that's the beautiful thing about this weapon. Now, the Ash of War itself, let's talk about the strengths. The Ash of War in itself, it's going to deal up to 10k damage, 10k damage, provided that you're hitting resistances or weaknesses of the enemy on the base game. That's on the base game. If you head over, like you can see right here on the shadow of the tree, at 10 Skadoo tree fragments, it has the potential of reaching like 15k damage, provided that you actually do hit the entirety of the animation of the Ash of War. That's the thing, that on very mobile enemies, it's not going to be that amazing, because sometimes you're not going to be able to hit the entirety of the animation. One cool thing about the animation, and not so cool about it as well, is that it has hyper armor whenever you are airborne, and there's like a couple of stages that you are going to be airborne through the animation, but as soon as you hit the ground, you can by all means get staggered out of the animation. So poise is very important with this weapon. That being said, this is one of the weapons that you can actually use from a distance. This is one of the new weapons. The cool thing about that is that the charge heavy attacks are going to be this javelin that it's going to deal tremendous amounts of damage, 1.2k damage precisely on the basic enemies, on the regular enemies on New Game Plus, the basic just New Game Plus without Shadow of the Tree. But that's the thing, that this weapon has so much versatility because it can also be used on horseback. And the tracking that this thing has on horseback, it's just out of this world. I can't say that I have ever had so much fun fighting against the dragons on the base game of Elden Ring. This thing just makes it look so epic, like those boss fights. It trivializes them, it makes them so easy because you have horseback and the tracking and the distance, but it also makes you look so epic because you are this just warrior fighting against a dragon on your horseback, throwing javelin at the dragon's head. It's just so cool and overpowered because the damage that it speaks for itself. Now this is a very stat-hungry build, because it has a dexterity requirement for the weapon. The weapon scales B on dexterity, but we are building it towards fate because our buff scenario, our buff routine, is going to improve the fire-based damage. And as you were able to see on the gameplay section, it doesn't matter that you're fighting dragons that are resistant to fire, because you have so much damage that you're still not going to care about the resistances of the enemy. You're still going to deal tremendous amounts of damage. That being said, the Ash of War also scales out of faith instead of dexterity, so there really is no point in going into the dexterity route. That being said, if you are a higher level character, if you're 200 or 250, one of those characters that has a little bit more level, you can by all means get dexterity to 80 and faith to 80. We are not going to be able to get faith to 80 right here, which is ideally what we want to do, because that's our hard cap on our best damaging stat. That being said, because of the hungriness of the stat of the builds, we are only being able to reach 64, but then again, this should be the priority, getting fate towards 80. Then we have just enough mind. It doesn't consume that much of FP. The weapon, more often than not, while you're doing exploration, you're not going to need to complete the entire combo, even on elite enemies that have really high health pool, because it's going to kill everything before you actually complete the animation. So more often than not, the animation is going to be used for fighting against bosses and dealing tremendous amounts of damage to bosses, provided that you don't get staggered out of the animation. But when it comes to elite enemies out there in the base game, it's not going to matter that much. Now in endurance, I am using Mesmer armor set right here, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But if you want to play some points into endurance as well to get like heavier armor, that's something that you can certainly do as well. Now I am using Mesmer's armor just because out of fashion, just because we're cosplaying as Mesmer right now. But then again, if you want to use something heavier for your armor, you can certainly do so, because you want to have that 51 poise threshold so that you don't get staggered out of the animation when you are not airborne but while performing your Ash of War. As for the shield, I just have the Mesmer Soldier shield right here. Then again, out of cosplay value, it's a very well-rounded shield, however it's not the best shield. It doesn't have that much requirements, so it doesn't require that much strength, so that's a good thing because we don't have that much strength right here. As for the seal, you can by all means use the Fire Knight seal to use the Mesmer's incantations. However, I don't think that it is going to be that great when it comes to the damage potential versus the Ash of War, so I'm just using the Finger Seal right here to buff our character, and that's it. The Talismans, like always, these are the mandatory ones and the recommendation ones that I have for you right here. In here you do have a little bit of more leniency to play around with, because there's some things that are going to work with some other things that are actually not going to work. So for example, Godfrey Icon is only going to affect the spell that we'll be using. However, Shout of Alexander, that's a native based thing that you should always have. The Sacred Scorpion, Fire Scorpion Charm, it's plus 12% more damage, so that's always highly appreciated, but it's also going to make you receive more damage, so a lot of people are hesitant to use this in DLC. Now that the Scadutree Fragments have been buffed, this is a little bit more viable to use. And then the Smithing Talisman that enhances the weapon throwing attacks. I actually do use my weapon throwing attacks quite a lot. Remember that on horseback they have amazing tracking. You can be they can be used to cheese enemies out there while on horseback and make those difficult fights. Always connect the attack. So I think that the Smithing Talisman is a must. But you can also use the Great Arsenal Talisman for you to be able to use heavier armor, get that 51 poise threshold, or maybe you need to get more stamina. Spoiler alert, this actually does uses quite a lot of stamina. Throwing your weapons, it uses quite a lot of stamina, so that's actually kind of nice. The Earth Tree Favor +2, or the Dragon Crest Talismans. There's many things that you can play around in here. I just think that the must ones should be Alexander and Smithing. Mainly 2 spells. That's what we're going to use. Flame, grant me strength. This is flat 40% extra damage that affects the Ash of War. One of the reasons why you can reach so much damage, because it's 20% physical damage and 20% fire damage. So it's just flat out 40% damage right there. And then you have Golden Bow that is going to give you plus 15% more damage, and that is going to alleviate, if you're using the Fire Scorpion Charm, the damage negation that you are receiving from that one as well. So Golden Bow, it's a must. You can also use fire incantations and the Mesmer's Flame, but then again, you do have faith enough. Then again, it's up to your personal preference. I don't think that they are going to outclass what the Ash of War actually does, and for FP economy, the Ash of War is just going to kill things faster. The mix of Wondrous Physique is actually quite simple. You get the extra percentage in damage from the Flame Shrouding Crack tier, which is always nice. And then the Dexterity Not Crystal Tia. This is one that you can be swapping to something different if you do like to use, like for example, the Greenburst Crystal Tier or the Opaline Bubble Tia. The overall good Crystal Tias that a lot of people like to use. Just have in mind that the Dexterity Not Crystal Tia is going to give you 10 points into Dexterity, and that the scaling of the weapon's Dexterity, it's actually 10. You can also use the Fate Not Crystal Tier right here if you want to increase the fire portion of the Ash of War even further than it already has. Just have in mind that we already reached the subcap, so might as well get a little bit of a scaling from Dexterity. So you have a weapon that can deal up to 10k base damage, which is filthy. Also one of the best stats of the game, because the fire, it's actually one of the best stats, the elements of the game. It's a weapon that can be used to poke from behind a shield. It's a weapon that has throwing javelins that can attack from a distance, that it also has amazing tracking from a horseback, and that the Ash of War, like we mentioned, it's just so filthy powerful, with that reaches huge amounts of damage. I don't think think that this is going to get nerfed, even while it is very powerful, but it's not like the perfume bottles or the bleeding build that we have out there, or the carrion slicer, the carrion sovereignty that we have built. This thing, it's powerful because it deals tremendous amounts of damage, but that damage actually has to be played properly because you can get staggered at the animation. And this build is just so powerful because it has so many tools. You can do so much stuff. You have so much different approaches to different fights thanks to this build that you have right here. You have so much faith so that you can be using, like, for example, defensive spells if you find out that you're having issues, or maybe you can use, like, for example, flames to have a little bit more of a distance alongside with your already very powerful throwing javelin. So all in all, this is one of the most round weapons in the entirety of the game, and it's very, very powerful. And don't be afraid, I don't think that this is one of the things that is going to get nerfed, but with From Software, we never know. Anyways, if you like the content, like and it's super appreciated, and also that you're a gorgeous and beautiful person, you're indeed a gorgeous and beautiful person. I'll be seeing you beautiful people in the next one. Join the Discord, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and have a beautiful day, goodbye.